Welcome to the news update for day 284 of the Ukraine war. You are listening to The Account. The main flashpoints today were Bakhmut. Battles continue. It was reported that a Georgian unit of the 57th Brigade of Ukraine took heavy casualties. Russian sources claim Ukrainian forces tried to recapture Kurdyumivka but were repelled. Kremina. Battles around Ploshchanka continue. The P-66 highway is cut. It was reported that Ukrainian forces were pushed back at Zydlivka. Pavlivka. It is claimed Ukrainian forces are carrying out localized counterattacks. A video shared on social media shows a Russian column destroyed by a mine while trying to advance. Moving on to the main news of the day. Gruesome footage has been shared today of what appears to be a public execution of civilians in the temporarily occupied part of Luhansk Oblast. For obvious reasons, we will not share the pictures here. Serhiy Cherevati, a spokesman of Ukraine's Operational Command East, claimed between 50 to 100 Russian troops are killed every day along the Bakhmut front. Using a favorite term among Ukrainian military spokespeople, he described the situation as tense but controlled. He further stated that the Russian troops will not be able to encircle the Ukrainian forces. However, Russia is trying to change tactics, particularly by trying to infiltrate Ukrainian positions in small groups. It has been reported that Russian units have begun mining infrastructure in and around Sievierodonetsk. The humanitarian situation remains critical. In late October, it was claimed Russia set up a training camp in the city to train mobilized soldiers. In a statement, U.S. National Intelligence Director Avril Haines claimed Russian forces are burning through ammunition faster than it can be replaced by the defense industry. This comes amid a similar claim made by the Pentagon last month, stating Russia is firing off a staggering 20,000 artillery rounds every day. The Ukrainian military's National Resistance Center reported yesterday that all collaborators in Oleshky have left. This comes amid other reports of Russian collaborators leaving other towns in the occupied Kherson Oblast. With the onset of winter in the east of Ukraine, more favorable conditions for the acceleration of military operations and the counteroffensive of the defense forces are created, writes the Institute for the Study of War in their daily assessment. Furthermore, the Institute points at a document published by a Russian Telegram channel dedicated to providing legal support to avoid compulsory military service, claiming the document indicates that despite the announced formal end of partial mobilization on October 31st, Putin's initial mobilization decree continues to be in force and that there are no legal grounds for dismissal from military service upon the expiration of service contract. Going on, the assessment mentions the Belarus situation and how Moscow continues to exert pressure on Belarus to launch an offensive operation against Ukraine. However, the likelihood of Belarusian troops joining the Russian war on Ukraine remains low. Finally, the assessment talks about how Russia is seeking to hold negotiations to achieve an operational pause, which would ease the growing political pressure on the Kremlin and give time to prepare new offensive operations. And finally, I want to point out a Twitter thread by NL War Tracker. It discusses Russia's construction of massive defensive structures in the Bakhmut area. I recommend giving it a read. And now the UK Ministry of Defence intelligence update. Recent polling suggests that the Russian public support for the special military operation is falling significantly. An independent Russian media outlet has claimed access to data collected by Russia's Federal Protective Service for internal use. The data indicated 55% of Russians favor peace talks with Ukraine, with only 25% claiming to support continuing the conflict. These results are consistent with a separate October 2022 survey where 57% of respondents reported being in favor of talks. In April 2022, around 80% of Russians claimed to support the operation. Despite the Russian authorities' efforts to enforce pervasive control of the information environment, the conflict has become increasingly tangible for many Russians since the September 2022 partial mobilization. with Russia unlikely to achieve major battlefield successes in the next several months, maintaining even tacit approval of the war amongst the population is likely to be increasingly difficult for the Kremlin. Finally, the evening report by the General Staff. The enemy is defending in the Kupiansk and Liman directions. In the Bakhmut and Avdiivka areas, the enemy is concentrating its main effort on conducting offensive operations and is trying to improve its tactical position. The occupiers restrict the rights and freedoms of civilians in the temporarily occupied territory of the Kherson region. Thus, under the guise of measures to combat subversive intelligence groups, these occupiers set up a roadblock on the Chaika River and prohibited the passage of private boats. In the temporarily occupied Skadovsky district, postal workers stopped delivering payments to pensioners. In order to receive pensions, invaders force elderly people to write applications and receive passports and citizenship of the Russian Federation in post offices. The enemy continues to suffer losses in the Donetsk and Luhansk directions. It is known that medical facilities in the city of Donetsk are full of wounded enemy servicemen. Planned operations for civilian patients have been postponed indefinitely. New wounded are not accepted. Up to 300 wounded Russian occupiers have been brought to Novopskov Territorial Medical Association of the temporarily occupied territory of Luhansk Oblast in recent days. This wraps up today's news. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.